away, and we'll see what happens." 800 pounds, Cade said after a short wait. "Good enough," Kowalczyk said. "Tell that engineer to hold up a while. He can fix this thing as soon as he gets parts. Come on, Lehman, let's get out of here." "Well, I'm glad that's over," said Cade. "You guys had me worried for a while." "Think we weren't worried?" Lehman asked. "And it's not over." "What?" Cade asked. "Oh, you mean the valve servo you two bashed up." "No," said Lehman. "I mean the 2,000 gallons of water that we lost." 2,000? Cade asked. "We only had 700 gallons reserve. How come we can operate now?" "We picked up 1,200 from the town sewage plant. What with using the solar furnace as a radiator, we can make do." "Oh, God, I suppose this means water rationing again." "You're probably right. At least until the next rocket lands in a couple of weeks." Prospector feared lost on moon. IPP Williamson Town, Moon, September 21st. Scientific Survey Director McElroy released a statement today that Howard Evans, a prospector, is missing and presumed lost. Evans, who was apparently exploring the moon in search of minerals, was due 2 days ago, but it was presumed that he was merely temporarily delayed. Evans began his exploration on August 25th and was known to be carrying several days' reserve of oxygen and supplies. Director McElroy has expressed a hope that Evans will be found before his oxygen runs out. Search parties have started from Williamson Town, but telescopic search from Palomar and the new satellite observatory are hindered by the fact that Evans is lost on the part of the moon which is now dark. Little hope is held for radio contact with the missing man, as it is believed he was carrying only short-range intercommunications equipment. Nevertheless, receivers are... Captain Nickel Jones was also expressing a hope. "Anyway, Mac," he was saying to McElroy, "a Welshman knows when his luck's run out, and never a word did he say." "Like as not you're right," McElroy replied, "but I know Evans. He'd never say a word without any forebodings." "Well, happen I might have a bit of Welsh second sight about me, and it tells me that Evans will be found." McElroy chuckled for the first time in several days. "So that's the reason you didn't take off when you were scheduled," he said. "Well, yes," Jones answered. "I thought that it might happen that a rocket would be needed in the search." The light from Earth lighted the moon as the moon had never lighted Earth. The great blue globe of Earth, the only thing larger than the stars, wheeled silently in the sky. As it turned, the shadow of sunset crept across the face that could be seen from the moon. From full Earth, as you might say, it moved toward last quarter. The rising sun shone into Director McElroy's office. The hot light formed a circle on the wall opposite the window, and the light became more intense as the sun slowly pulled over the horizon. Mrs. Garth walked into the director's office, and saw the director sleeping with his head cradled in his arms on the desk. She walked softly to the window and adjusted the shade to darken the office. She stood looking at McElroy for a moment, and when he moved slightly in his sleep, she walked softly out of the office. A few minutes later she was back with a cup of coffee. She placed it in front of the director and shook his shoulder gently. "Wake up, Mr. McElroy," she said. "You told me to wake you at sunrise, and there it is. And here's Mr. Phelps." McElroy woke up slowly. He leaned back in his chair and stretched. His neck was stiff from sleeping in such an awkward position. "Morning, Mr. Phelps," he said. "Good morning," Phelps answered, dropping tiredly into a chair. "Have some coffee, Mr. Phelps," said Mrs. Garth, handing him a cup. "Any news?" asked McElroy. "About Evans?" Phelps shook his head slowly. "Palomar called in a few minutes back. Nothing to report, and the sun was rising there. Australia will be in position pretty soon." several observatories there, then Cape Town. There are lots of observatories in Europe, but most of them are clouded over. Anyway, the satellite observatory will be in position by the time Europe is." McIlroy was fully awake. He glanced at Phelps and wondered how long it had been since he had slept last. More than that, McIlroy wondered why this banker, who had never met Evans, was losing so much sleep about finding him. It began to dawn on McIlroy that nearly the whole population of Williamson Town was involved, one way or another, in the search. The director turned to ask Phelps about this fact, but the banker was slumped in his chair, fast asleep, with his coffee untouched. It was 3 hours later that McIlroy woke Phelps. "They found the tractor," McIlroy said. "Good," Phelps mumbled, and then his comprehension came. "That's fine. That's just fine. Is Evans?" "Can't tell yet. They spotted the tractor from the satellite observatory. Captain Jones took off a few minutes ago, and he'll report back as soon as he lands. Hadn't you better get some sleep?" Evans was carrying a block of ice into the tractor when he saw the rocket coming in for a landing. He dropped the block and stood waiting. When the dust settled from around the tail of the rocket, he started to run forward. The airlock opened, and Evans recognized the vacuum-suited figure of Nickel Jones. "Evans, man," said Jones' voice in the intercom. "Alive you are." "A Welshman takes a lot of killing," Evans answered. Later, in Evans' tractor, he was telling his story. "And I don't know how long I sat there after I found the water." He looked at the Goldbergian device he had made out of wire and tubing. "Finally, I built this thing. These caves were made of lava. They must have been formed by steam sometime, because there's a floor of ice in all of them. The idea didn't come all at once. It took a long time for me to remember that water is made out of oxygen and hydrogen. When I remembered that, of course, I remembered that it can be separated with electricity. So I built this thing. It runs on an electric current through water, lets the oxygen loose in the room, and pipes the hydrogen outside. It doesn't work automatically, of course, so I run it about an hour a day. My oxygen level gauge shows how long." "You're a genius, man," Jones exclaimed. "No," Evans answered. "A Welshman, nothing more." "Well then," said Jones, "are you ready to start back?" "Back?" "Well, it was to rescue you that I came." "I don't need rescuing, man," Evans said. Jones stared at him blankly. "You might let me have some food," Evans continued. "I'm getting short of that. And you might have someone send out a mechanic with parts to fix my tractor. Then maybe you'll let me use your radio to file my claim." "Claim?" "Sure, man. I've thousands of tons of water here. It's the richest mine on the moon." End of All Day September by Roger Kuykendall.